Hi, it's Aaron Redknapp here. You're listening to a proper podcast. It's the Alan Hudson podcast. It's proper football, proper talk.
Well, hello again. Welcome again to the Alan Hudson podcast. Thanks very much for joining us. Sorry about the short break we've had. We've had a few internet problems in the last couple of weeks, but hopefully we're back fully fit and firing today. We got another terrific guest. He's a lifelong Chelsea fan, and we see him almost every day on our Sky Sports News screens. It's of course Rob Wotton. Rob, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Well, what an honour to be here. Two legends. It's sat in front of me. I can see in my eyes.
Well,
definitely only one.
he was talking about the photo behind, not you.
But great to have you on, Rob. Like I said in the introduction, a lifelong Chelsea fan. We want to talk about Chelsea in a minute, but I'd just like you to start off with your career and let us know how it all got up and running for you.
Okay. Well, obviously as a child I wanted to be a footballer, and I was blessed with two left feet, so that didn't quite happen. So I thought, what's the next best thing? What I really wanted to be was but I quickly realized I remember doing so what I did was I went to Capital Gold Sport to start with, and what a team we had there at the time, with Jonathan Pearce, Steve Wilson, both now at Match of the Day, Julian Waters, who was at Sky for a very long time, Ian Crocker, who is now kind of the Scotland commentator, Jim Proudfoot, Dave Clark. It was an incredible team, and I remember one time, because I wanted to be a commentator. One time, Chelsea were playing Sheffield Wednesday at Stamford Bridge, and it was before the days of them holding up, the sign to say how long was added on. And I think the referee had added on about 485 minutes of time. And I can remember Waddle crossed the ball, and I was doing the commentary this Saturday afternoon. In those days, I think we had about 2 million listeners. Waddle crosses the ball, and I'm doing the commentary, and I'll say the ball's out on the far side. Waddle crosses it in, and Sheffield Wednesday go and score the equaliser. And I'm absolutely incensed. I'm incensed by this. Luckily, I didn't swear, because normally when I'm at a game, something like that happens, I'm very creative in these swear words I can put in combinations together to explain my disgust. But all I said is, "Oh no, that's so unfair. That's so unfair." And I can hear the producer in my ear going, "Tell us what's happened. Tell us what happened." And I went, "No, I won't. It's just unfair. It's unfair." And I realized at that point that maybe I get too emotionally involved in games to be a commentator. So I left Sky in '98. Final game there was the World Cup final.
Left Capital, you mean?
Yeah, left Capital in '98 was Brazil against France, and somewhere in the house, somewhere, I've got the two team sheets, one with the original Ronaldo's name not in it, and the other one with, which is quite nice. And then I started at Sky, so that was the Sunday, drove back, had my leaving do on the Monday, which lasted sometime Tuesday, I'm not sure when, and then started at Sky on the Wednesday in '98, and from then until now I've been at Sky.
That's some career, something to be proud of.
Well, yeah, all things come to an end, and but it's been a blast the past 27 years. It's been great fun. I've worked with some great people, and it's been good. The 27 plus the 8 at Sky, so 35. It's not bad.
That's terrific.
Well, it was a good year for you, '98, but it wasn't so good for me, because I was in a coma in '98.
I remember that, Huddy. I remember that.
I was supposed to be the year before. The few lads, you know, like the doing the dinners and all that. One of my favourite people, and he's very well known, David Brown. He was a bit of a ticket tout. He started off his career basically by the Chelsea and Stoke Cup final, the League Cup. Although he worked before that, and he went up to Stoke to get the tickets, and they'd never heard of ticket touts in Stoke. And he had all of them, Gordon Banks, George Eastham, and he bumped into, because Ginger, David Brown, being ginger-headed, he bumped into Terry Conroy, and they kind of clicked. Amazing. And he told him what he wanted to do and how much money he would give him. And Terry said to all the boys, give us your tickets. So they all give him the tickets without David giving any money up front. He just trusted him with the money. It's unbelievable, never been heard of. Anyway, one thing led to another, and that's what's put David on the way, and he become one of the top men. And I went over to Paris the year before that final, when you started, to Paris for the opening of the stadium, I believe.
Mm.
And Pele was there. I met an old mate of mine from New York Cosmos, Bogachivic. He was there. Few faces there. And I was really looking for, and I was going to work over there with David throughout the summer. I ended up watching him in my hospital bed when I come out of the coma. So it's amazing how you can't plan things, you know.
Oh.
But you were telling me a couple of days ago, Rob, that you and Huddy worked together in your time at Capital, and he told me a lovely story. It might be a good time to recount that.
Well, he most probably doesn't. You most probably don't remember this, Huddy, but we did a game, Everton. I think it was Everton against Arsenal, for Capital Gold Sport, and we got the train up there with Jonathan Pearce, and we did the game. I mean, I can't even remember the result. It's Arsenal, so it didn't really pay much heed. But anyway, we did the game, and then we had to do a phone in afterwards, I think, and that went on till 6 o'clock or whatever, 6:30. I can't remember.
Did we jump in a taxi from the station with Bill Kembright?
That's the one. Yeah. We got in the taxi with him. He offered us a lift in his taxi. Yeah. That was good memory. Anyway, we got back to Lime Street, and the train's waiting there to take us back to London. And Huddy goes, "No, we can't get on that one." So he looks at us and said, "Why can't we get on that one?" He said, "That'll be a dry train. We can't get on that one. We'll have to sit in the bar for a while and wait for the next one." So we wait for the next one, and the next one's about to leave. He goes, "No, I think that'll still be a dry train. Let's wait for the next one." So we're up to about 9 o'clock now, and we're still sat there. Anyway, he lets us get onto the 9 o'clock one. He's pulling out of Lime Street, and he goes, "Right, Rob," gives us a wad of money and goes, "Go down to the buffet, buy all the beers they've got." So I wandered down to the buffet, and I'm stood in the queue, and I'm looking at the shelves, and I'm going, "Oh my God. It's another dry train. It's another dry train." So I've got to the front, and I thought, "Well, what do I do now?" So I bought 3 coffees, took them back, popped them on the table. Huddy, you've looked at it, what on earth is that? So I've gone, "It's a dry train, sorry." So we're pulling into Runcorn. He says, "I tell you what," he says, "I'm going to keep the door open. You run out into the Traveller's Fair and buy all the beer they've got in there, and I'll keep the door open so you won't miss the train." So we get to Runcorn, and I've had to run up the platform, get to the Traveller's Fair, and it's shut. "Oh God, what are you doing?" He said, "Well, that's a dry train. We've got to shut the Traveller's Fair." Oh, God. So I run back on, and he's going, "Oh no, that's..." Every stop we stopped at, Runcorn, Crewe, Rugby, all the way down to London, I've had to get out the train, run up the platform, get to the Traveller's Fair. They've gone, "Nah, we're shut." And Huddy's, "Oh God,
Saturday night. What a way to spend a Saturday night."
So we finally supposed to have got into Euston at, I don't know, half 8, 9 o'clock. Oh, he's gone.
He'll be back. He'll be back.
Oh, shall we wait for him? Oh, he's back.
Sorry, my Wi-Fi just dropped out. Don't know what happened there.
We noticed that.
And I missed the punchline clearly.
Well, I didn't.
Hey, waited.
I waited for you, Tony. That's only polite, isn't it? Anyway, we finally roll into Euston. Should have been 9 o'clock. It's now kind of 11:30, 11:45. I'm knackered. We've been on the go since 8 o'clock in the morning. Jonathan's grumpy. Kind of usual. And Huddy pipes up with, boys, I know a great bar that's open just round the corner till 3 a.m. Do you fancy coming for one? We both gone, no, we're going home. And off we trot.
That don't sound like me.
Well, you didn't. I think you went to the bar.
And it just goes to show how important it was. We don't know the score.
No.
Who cares?
It was about the company.
Yeah.
You remember that occasion clearly, Al?
I remember it for all the wrong reasons, really. I don't. I was having a bit of trouble at home, and I remember my phone, my mobile phone had run out, and I couldn't get it. And I think, oh, she's gonna go mad when I get home, because I haven't called, and I couldn't use my phone. So I thought, well, I might make the most of it, and that was probably the reason why. So I thought, rather than get two kids, I might as well just get the one, so have it all, take it all in one on Sunday morning. But I can't remember too much of the game. No. Don't know what it was. But I remember, because I met Bill Kenwright once, and he was a nice man. I remember getting in a cab with Bill and wishing him well. Yeah, that was it. But I would have I'd have stayed there forever holding that train door open for you, Rob.
I'm very glad about that. It was a long walk from Rugby.
Well, let's get on to your Chelsea connections now, Rob. And I think you're probably celebrating your 50th anniversary of being a fan.
Yes, yeah. My first season there was the first season of the East Stand, so just after Huddy had left. So 74, 75 was it? Yeah. I remember my first game was a 0-0 draw. I remember going. I can remember my dad saying, right, what was I then? 74. I was 5. I can remember my dad saying, right, we're the team in blue. I knew that bit. What we got to do is we got to get that ball and we got to pop it in that goal there. Because you never saw football on telly, really, did you? Match of the day, and that was about it. But I'd been brought up with the kind of traditions of Chelsea before I'd gone. But this is my first game. And it was a 0-0 draw. I can remember sitting there thinking, what he didn't tell me is the other team were trying to stop us from putting the ball in the net. So and I'm sitting there thinking, God, even I could go out there and do that, which actually became a familiar theme during the kind of, from that period onwards, watching Chelsea. It was kind of like, yeah, bless them. But yeah, those days, my dad and all his mates, they always used to go in the Ifield Tavern. So they were in the Ifield Tavern, and they always then used to go in the shed. But the first year, I think they were desperate to sell tickets in that East Stand, weren't they? It was so big and whatever. They worked out that actually, it's incredible to think now, season tickets in the East Middle, which is now, I dread to think, you've got to sell a kidney to watch football from there nowadays, don't you? A season ticket in there in those days was cheaper than paying to go in the shed every game for a season. So him and all his mates from the Ifield Tavern bought season tickets in that East Middle, and he bought one for me. So I think he thought shed, when you're kind of 3 or 4 in those days, most probably wasn't the best place to be, but You can go in the
Because
east.
that was the players' pub as well, wasn't it? Venables and all them used to go in before, and Osgood and Bill, a fella called Bill Tidy had it.
I can't remember his name, but he looked exactly like Paisley from Liverpool, didn't he? He had that grey hair slicked back with brill cream. He looked exactly like him.
Right.
And he was one of the season ticket holders as well in that little group. And what would happen is, I mean, it's incredible. Because in those days I don't understand drinking, do I? I couldn't drink Coca-Cola for years afterwards because they'd give me a bottle of Coca-Cola, sit me in the corner by that bar billiards table, which they'd never put money in for me to play. And anyway, I couldn't even reach it. And I'd have to sit in the corner with a bottle of Coke for hours and hours and hours. And it always seemed to be, I'd be looking at the clock thinking, right, 10-3 now, surely we should be going. And it always seemed to be, I would just have one more. I don't think I didn't know what kickoff was in a game for years because we never got there in time. Because they'd always have one more before going in, and then we'd rush from there, and I'd have all this fizzy Coca-Cola trying to get into the game to watch the game. We'd always miss kickoff. And then straight afterwards, I don't know whether it was the old licensing laws or what, or whether he just didn't know open it up for normal people. I don't know. But we go back and have to tap on the window, and the little curtain by the door would open, and he'd let us in. And then we'd go and sit in there. We'd sit in there till, I'd be sat in the corner till like 11:30 at night, just sitting there while they all got absolutely battered, and then fall asleep on one of the seats, and then they'd pick me up, stick me in the car, and we'd go home.
It's just as well they weren't all on the train with us that day, wasn't it?
Yeah, God, there'd be a stampede on Rugby train station.
Well, it's a bit of a connection, a loose one probably, but I mean, your first season, 74-75, and you end up in the East Stand, and that, of course, is the reason why Huddy left Chelsea in the first place.
Well, yeah.
Well, I was going to say you started being a Chelsea supporter at a very bittersweet sweet time of my life. It kind of made me, but wrecked me in many ways. Because you never see it coming. It was something. Strangely enough, I was writing about it in the week. It was just the way it all happened. They wouldn't believe. No one would believe the truth. They would, and even when they went into tribunal about me leaving, because Ozzy all got paid, made sure he got paid up. Me, I didn't get paid up. We went to tribunal, and you wouldn't believe it. If it had been in High Court, there would have been probably a couple of people locked up for, putting their hand on the Bible, what was said and what was done, the reason why they got rid of us. It was just, and I knew for in the back of my mind for quite a while that they were plotting. Chelsea, Dave Sexton and Brian Mears were plotting something like this because because we had the porter cabins, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
Which was, why did they change it at that time when they didn't have the finance and everything else? I could understand it later on when Matthew went there, and I know that Bates done well, whatever you like him or not, I suppose he done well. That's a double-sided coin as well. But I think Matthew would have done it properly, It'd have made sure it would have done out of season and got it all done ready, and none of that porter cabin thing. And they planned, and I truly believe that they got rid of the East Stand because Dave Sexton didn't like that long bar at the back of it. Because every time he'd walk along before the game, or one way or the other, there was the players that weren't playing, obviously, would be drinking it with all the Michael Crawfords and the John Alderton, and you mentioned the names, and they were there. They're all Chelsea. They were all. It was a place to be, wasn't it, Stamford Bridge? And he didn't like that. And he even put a note on the board: anyone seen drinking before matches or during matches will be fined. And I remember that Christmas, Tommy Baldwin and I, we were injured up, and went up in the long bar, and we said, what do we do, you know? And I was staying with a couple of pals of mine. One was a fella called Joe Mackay. He used to be the doorman at Annabelle's in Berkeley Square, which was the hardest club to get in London. And I remember Tommy and I drinking brandies out of a teacup with a cup and saucer, so he wouldn't know, you know. And he'd walk by and he couldn't. I mean, if he'd been true to us and true to him, he should have just come over and said, "Look, put them down and let's talk this over." But that would enrage him even more, you know. And it festered and festered and festered, and that led to the me and Osgood thing. But he wanted that East Stand gone, and that was part of the reason, because there was no reason to do that. You know, there's other parts of the ground that needed doing before that East Stand, but he wanted that. They wanted that bar gone, and it sounds trivial and a silly way, but he really did. He was obsessed with the Monday to Friday part of the game, you know. Where when I moved to Stoke, it didn't matter what you done Monday to Friday, as long as you done it on a Saturday. You know, I went to a completely different manager with a completely different mindset. He had a lot, you know. Before I got there, Stoke City had the Morris Setters, you know, Harry Greggs and all them, you know, who've been in the Munich thing. And he got all them people in to save Stoke City from relegation, basically, getting the old mansion, because he was very close to Busby. He got all this old Stoke, all these elder players come in, some great old players, you know, Jimmy McElroy, people like that, great players. And that followed on, and that obviously that led to me going there, because the last great player he had was George Eastham, who he didn't do us any. So he done me a favour in the end, him scoring the winner for Stoke, because then they wouldn't have been able to buy me, you know, because he could go into bank manager and get some money. And but yeah, that season, that was just, if they made a film of Damn United, that should have been Damn Chelsea, really, because that was a time. It's a far superior story and tragic, really, than the Brian Clough story. That, because that was personal. That was more personal than even with me, Osgood, and Dave. Dave Sexton and Peter Osgood were the two that were always shaping up and wanting to fight each other, you know. But they shouldn't have come into it, because Osgood was the best centre forward in the world at that time. He should have let him just get on with it. And said, keep doing it on a Saturday, do what you want. That's why I wanted to buy him. He didn't care if he went out on a Thursday night, Friday night, as long as he produced it on a Saturday, and that was the problem we had with Dave. And he had the people like Charlie Cook and Tommy Baldwin, Johnny Boyle, and all liked a good time, you know. And that was what Chelsea was about. I mean, you were 5 then, when you were around the time when you were born, you know, the swinging 60s at that time. Chelsea down the King's Road into the 70s was incredible, you know.
Yeah. Well, so, I was brought up on those stories, and I'm glad you referenced that George Eastham one, and the money that they got from that was the money that they effectively used to buy you, because that's what I was kind of brought up on. That story. And then there was that gap, wasn't there? So I was thinking, well, is that really true? Because my dad was at both FA Cup games 70. He went out to Greece in 71 and was there in 72. And actually somewhere my sister did, you know, you used to do those scrapbooks when you're a kid. See, youngsters nowadays wouldn't know what a scrapbook is, isn't it? But I got a scrapbook all the way up to the 72 final that my sister did, and then it stops. It stops dead at Wembley, doesn't go on anymore. There's no clippings of afterwards in there, it just stops. And I used to, you know, as a kid, I used to pore through those and look at them and kind of try and soak up those kind of moments that I was alive for. So I was alive for 70, alive for 71, I was alive for 72. But obviously I was so young I couldn't.
Absolutely, absolutely.
I remember when my dad got back. Well, I can't remember. I have been told when my dad got back in 71 and he stayed out there, as any good drinking Chelsea supporter would do, stayed out there and made sure he was there for the replay. Apparently the scarf was draped over my kind of cot when he got back, and you know, there was kind of, and it was a silk scarf.
So that was you done then. You were the Chelsea supporter forever after that. Yeah.
Well, I did have a choice. I could be a Chelsea fan or live in the shed at the bottom of the garden, and it was kind of well, you know, I had no choice. My dad was from Battersea, all his family, you know, Battersea.
Yeah.
They were all kind of, yeah. There was no choice matter.
But going back to the 71 trip was the most it's never really mentioned, but the most iconic photograph you'll see of that year was us boarding the plane to go to the first match. We beat Salonika in Greece, and we had a photo done alongside outside the actual plane on the tarmac, and a team photo. All the lads suited up in the grey suits, and it was only me with a duty free in his hand, you know. And I had all the King's Road gear on, you know, and that was the time when it all started. But that kind of photo, you would have thought that photo would have been done for us going out for the final, because no one ever talks about it. It all started and ended in Greece, you know. And I think one chapter of the Working Man Valley was Greece is the word, you know, from the film, you know, and but nobody ever says, you know, if only we'd have known when we went to Salonika that we'd be going back for the final. And that's really, Rob, you'll know better than it. Well, and Tony, because of your journalism thing. But in them days, we didn't know who was in it. Even when we got to the semi-final and played Manchester City, we didn't know who the other semi-finalists were, because there was no Sky TV there. There was none of all that. You know, you didn't know about other teams. Whereas today, you know, you'd know all along, oh, they're still in it. We'll watch them and see how good they are. But we actually went in there blind, and we played. Even when we walked out against Real Madrid, we didn't know any. We knew Hento was on the line, but he was older than my dad. And they had a fella. The best thing that happened to us in 1971 was Pirri breaking his arm. And I watched the game the other night. I've got it there, Chelsea 71 Cup. And my Wi-Fi was broken. I put a DVD, see that was bad. And I watched the game the other night, and Pirri was a shadow of the man he was in the first game because he broke his arm. But I watched the game, and I thought it was a poor game. Not a lot of quality. If people today watching it, probably because there was no foreigners in our side then, were they? And the only one that played like a foreigner was Charlie Cook that night, and he had a real good night that night, which we've had him on the show, and he won't remember that, Tony, would he? You know?
No, his memory's not quite as good as yours when it goes back to the 70s.
Well, yeah, but I was younger, and it wasn't. I wish I didn't have such a good memory, because I'd have forgotten about missing the cup final and the World Cup, and that would all be a blur, you know. But it's so clear in my mind, you know, and that's probably not such a good thing. Although I'm happy not to be losing it, it's still fresh in my mind, and you know, it's probably because it was my ankle, and I still get up in the morning. It plays me up 50 years on, you know, from it. When you see the pictures today, that couldn't have happened, you know. That was a thing about it. But and the other thing about the Chelsea Leeds thing is that poor Paul Reaney. I remember sitting around in our prefab, and the news come
through that Paul Reinier broke his leg at West Ham, I think, on the Monday night. But you never really heard too much about. He missed it and I missed it. Because remember the Wembley jinx?
Mm.
That went back way beyond that. They nearly always broke their leg before or at Wembley, you know, the Notts Forest final and things like that. Reggie Dwight, Elton John's uncle or whatever played in it, you know. But anyway, we'll move on. I wanted to clear the Greece thing up because I can't believe that nobody ever says the Salonika thing, and how many people must have stood at the bar going out to the final thinking this is where it all started, you know. Couldn't have entered anyone's mind. But looking at that photograph, you think, I wonder what we went into that thinking this is just a brand new experience, and we didn't know who we were playing. I remember Ozzy missed a penalty. I remember the fella spitting at Ozzy when he was going to take the penalty, and there was a commotion, and all the Greeks were like that in them days. And we felt, oh, and then I can remember thinking as well also, and I put that in my book, why were they being, you know, they knew they got to come to Stamford Bridge. Why were they doing all these dirty tricks on us, you know? Because we knew when they come to Stamford Bridge, they were on our turf and they were going to get it, you know. I mean, not just beat, but they were going to get Ronnie Harris and Eddie McCready and David Webb and John Dempsey weren't going to mess about with them, you know. Mm-hmm. Remembering what they done over there the week before. And I found that a bit strange, but that their coach never said, calm down a bit, we've got to go away yet, you know. Mm. But which I've always find interesting, that part of it. But so
Rob, did your obviously your dad was there for the 2 games in Athens for the final. Mm-hmm. And did he come back with any colourful stories of his adventures in Athens?
To be honest with you, Tony, if there had been colourful things happening, he would have forgotten about them by the time he got home. I don't think he would have remembered any of them, to be honest. Yeah, all I can remember, I mean, what was I, 72? I was 3 at the time. That he was supposed to be home one day and he wasn't, but that wasn't unusual, really.
Sorry, Tom. One of the funny stories of that was because when I watched that tape the other night, Johnny Hollins was doing a bit of the commentary on that match, of the replay, and I remember we never had Chris Hollins on the show, Tony, have we?
No, it's a good idea.
I think we tried to get him. I think I asked him one night, and he was a bit iffy, but. I remember him working on the BBC News. He'd done the sports for the news, young Chris, and he was very good. And there was a Champions League game going on, and the fella said to him, your father was involved with a European final, and he told the story about they didn't know what to do because it was a draw. And that is true. They really didn't know what to do. So they said, while we're here, we might as well play it Friday. Because that's how used to say, well, you for all this, you know. And Johnny Hollins phoned up Linda after the game Wednesday. He said, I won't be back till Saturday. She said, but you played tonight. He went, yeah, well, we drew and they decided to have the replay. She said, but your best man at such and such a wedding on Friday, on Saturday. He said, I'm sorry, he won't let me come back. And he had a right falling out of his missus over that, which was quite entertaining because all through, you imagine that happened today. They draw, they don't know what to do. So they're just making VAR are just making their mind up whether to have you know, play it again now. You might as well played it again now or played it till someone scored, you know. It was that farcical, really. And and your father and a load of other people from around here slept on the beaches and, you know, stayed overnight, had a few beers on the beach and went through the day, watched the final and come back. It was incredible, really.
Yeah.
You missed all that, Chris.
Amazing. Amazing seeing as people forget the Cup Winners' Cup was European second major trophy. It wasn't kind of like a a throwaway thing. It was above what would become the UEFA Cup, isn't it? So it was the European Cup, Cup Winners' Cup, and then so it was the second. It was the second biggest trophy in Europe, and they didn't know what to do.
Yeah. Well, that's entirely true, though. They did know what to do. But and then it was ironic that we knocked Man City out in the semi-final, who were holders.
Mm.
They won it the year before with a really good team. And then we played them in the FA Cup as holders. And they knocked us out down here one day.
Mm.
I think they beat us 3-0. And I didn't play, and I was not very happy with the manager that day. But
well, it's
so that
because you weren't playing.
Well, no, you just feel that it makes them very, very. I mean, supporters today go mad. They got 8-9 people on the bench today, and they bring 3 like done it again last night. They bring 3 on at a time, don't they?
Mm.
But we only have 1 sub. You know, it was only a squad of 14. You know, that's how much the game has completely changed, isn't it? And obviously, Rob working at Sky, you must see that more than anybody. You know, preparing for the game, and they got 9 subs and got, you know.
Yeah, it's unrecognisable now, isn't it, from how it was? I mean, that famous Christmas when David Webb ended up in goal, you wouldn't get that nowadays, would you?
No.
Well, that was another great story, wasn't it? That was that was kind of, if they had a camera in the dressing room at that time, it would have been, you know, because Dave Sexton, the call had been made to get young Steve Sherwood, who went up to Yorkshire, to wherever he came from, and he was going up for Christmas, and they said, get him back here. I don't know how they got him back. And Dave went in to see Bobby Robson, who was his mate, because they worked in Fulham together, and he said, look, I know it's going to be a half-hour team sheet before the game, but if we can get Sherwood back, because we haven't got a goalie, is it all right even to get back at 10-3? Can he play? And Bobby Robson said yes. Dave Webb had the goalkeeper's jersey on at 2:45, and Steve Sherwood walks in, and it was like watching one of those movies where it was quickened up, you know. And he now David had to get his green shirt off and throw it to him. He had to get his number 2 shirt on and throw it to Webb, and it was clammy. And then all of a sudden, once this had happened, a message comes through the door that Bobby Robson's changed his mind. That's what a lovely man Bobby Robson was. This is what this is. And so he changed his mind. So it was all change again. David Webb now in goal. And you remember he walked out and he fell in front of, he weren't in front of the chair. I think it was at the other end, and he prayed, didn't he? The good photo of Webby doing that. But that's what happened. And I think that is why we actually won on the day. We didn't need a team talk once he changed his mind. That was the team talk telling us that, you know, which, and then when he became England, he was the gentleman of football and, you know, everything else. And I thought, well, not for me. Because I was a Fulham supporter when he played there, and it just, all that went out the window.
Looking back at your time as a Chelsea fan, Rob, what games, what matches, what decade, what team stands out for you?
Oh, I mean, so many for so many different reasons. I mean, it's a hard one at the moment because when I used to watch, when we weren't very good, I used to walk away from the game and my feeling was, well, bless them, they tried. You know, we're not very good, but at least they were out there and they gave it everything. So I still love those kind of teams. I mean, obviously, the kind of first sort of set of players that I watched, the likes of kind of Mickey Droy and the two Rays in midfield. Obviously, love Ray Wilkins, but bizarrely, I used to quite often go for the not so obvious choice. So I loved Ian Britton. I loved him. I loved the way he ran around. And I can remember Kevin Hitchcock. Kevin Hitchcock had a testimonial at Stamford Bridge once, which I covered, and then he said, "Oh, come into the bar afterwards where all and Ian Britton was in there." And I was like because I used to write letters to Ian Britton and he would write back.
Really?
I'd never known this. And I would ask him sort of questions. P.S. Why did you miss that penalty against Burnley? And bless him, he would write back and he put a 1 with a circle round it and write. And I've still got the letters somewhere.
Wow.
So anyway, I've seen Ian Britton at this thing, and I am like a child again. And I think he was almost close to kind of asking for security to get me thrown out, because I'm there going, "Oh, I remember the time you did this. I remember the time you did that. And did you remember that letter you wrote?" And he's going, "Who is this weirdo? Get him out of here." So I love those sort of teams. Bizarrely, the promotion team of 88, 89, the one under John Neal I liked as well. In those days I smoked. I know, very bad for your health. But every time we got a corner on our right, I used to light a cigarette, and I was stood in the shed by those times, and we seemed to score every time we got a corner from the right, and everyone would jump up and down, and I'd be kind of on the floor trying to find the cigarette. Like, they'd go, "Where did that go? Where did that go?" So I like that team. 88, 89, I think I only missed one game. That was the Walsall game when Jury got 5, I think, in that game, didn't he? I think it was a Friday night, wasn't it? And I just couldn't get to it. But I think I went every game home and away that season. And then, I wish I'd been in. I wish I'd kind of got there in 71, but I was too young. 2012, the Champions League final. I mean, just it was just beating. I mean, a Champions League final, beating the Germans in their own backyard on penalties. It just doesn't get much better than that, especially when they put up that thing at the start of the game saying, I had to get someone to translate it for me. It said, "Our stadium, our cup," or something. And then we stuck it up them in front of their own fans on penalties. And unfortunately, very sadly, what it meant was Tottenham didn't qualify for the Champions League. I mean, you couldn't get anything better, could you? Really. But, for someone who was brought up on all those stories, before I even went to that game in 74, 75, I was aware of Alan. I was aware of, Charlie Cook, Peter Osgood. Benetti obviously was still there. Ron Harris was still there. But I was kind of craving that glamour of that time all the way up. And I think 2012 is the time where I could think to myself, I've seen a glimpse of the glamour that was the swinging King's Road in the 1970s before I got there. I think that's what it was.
But I think the obvious big change was the influx of the foreign player, wasn't it? That's what changed football completely. When you were a teenager, because I remember coming back from Seattle and thinking, because although I'd come back a couple of times to see my family, my mum and dad come over to Seattle, whatever, my sister, I come back and I thought the game, I was away for 4 years, and the game had changed completely. I think Charlie Hughes had come in and put his Route 1 football into the game and nearly destroyed us. I mean, for 12 years, we didn't qualify for the World Cup, did we? And it wasn't until we started bringing in these as he was voted the player, Zola at Chelsea. But we had the best Chelsea team, didn't we, Tone?
Yeah.
Which was quite interesting. A lot of people, I speak to a lot of people, and they always forget who was in our team, the little winger, the Dutch fella. You know, at West Ham they had Paulo Di Canio. I mean, these players that came over, they could. Arsenal, they swear by Dennis Bergkamp. You know, everybody had a. You know, you had Ruud Gullit. You know, you could never believe that you'd been through that time earlier on when Chelsea went through all that transition, of, if that's the right word, before Bates come in, and then all of a sudden obviously a lot of the brains behind this was Matthew. Matthew Harding wanted to rule the world, and you know, it was another story with Bates, and he wanted to go a different route. But I remember Matthew saying to me, introduced me to Matt Letizia because I want to sign him. You know, that couldn't happen today, you know. And his favourite, I think one of his favourite players was Glenn Hoddle. So that was Matthew's. That was Matthew's idea of the new Chelsea, you know.
It's interesting because what was the greatest signing of the modern era for Chelsea? Actually, my argument would be it's Glenn Hoddle, because without Glenn Hoddle, you didn't get Mark Hughes, you didn't get Ruud Gullit. Without those two, you didn't get Zola. And you can kind of trace it all the way down the line, because there's that great story with Ruud Gullit when he comes over, and they didn't, because Chelsea were training down at Harlington at the time, weren't they? It was before Cobham, and they didn't take him. They didn't take him there. and I think Glenn Hoddle had changed the socks to white, hadn't he? Which was what you played in your day.
Yeah.
You had those blue socks, which I never liked. Every time we seem to play in blue socks now, because it tends to be away from home, I'm always a little bit anxious. But he changed the socks to white, and apparently Ruud Gullit is Tony, you'll tell me. Ruud Gullit went, what colour socks do you play in? Was one of his questions, and Glenn Hoddle said white, and he said, okay, I'm in. So without Glenn Hoddle, none of what followed may have happened. So if we're looking at what is the greatest signing Chelsea have made in the modern era, I mean, obviously you would, you know, go Drogba, Lampard, and all kind of all those players, but maybe without Glenn Hoddle, none of the rest would have happened.
Well, that makes sense. Yeah, it was pretty much the same. Wotton was along exactly the same lines when he signed Stanley Matthews first, but then later signed the best. Gordon Banks from Leicester was probably the greatest signing ever for 30 odd grand. Best goalkeeper in the world. You know, this is only a year after that they've been to Mexico. And by getting him, he had got Jeff Hurst go there. Although they weren't in their prime, he had Jeff Hurst go there. George Easton go there because he was mates with Banksy. And you'd be amazed. Your football club then goes up to another level. And I think Tony, although he brought these players in to progress and the youngsters would learn more off them than what they did on a Saturday, he did it for the club worldwide being a lot, you know, because people used to follow, you know, Gordon Banks, where's he now? Stoke City, you know, it's unbelievable. And he could get a trip, he could sell Stoke City to anywhere in the world for a tour with them players in the club. It's amazing. And he always had that in the back of his mind, you know. And that's why obviously it was the Green, then Greenoff came, and then it was the me, and then the Osgood he wanted. So that was a kind of transition, all from Gordon Banks. Exactly what you're saying. Yeah. You know, and clubs do that.
I've got a question for you, Rob. I mean, your passion and your love for Chelsea shines through. How do you keep yourself showing your obvious bias when you have to report on Chelsea on Sky Sports News?
Well, it's very hard. I remember being on air one time. I think we were playing away at Wigan. It was a Saturday evening, and I used to do the Saturday night shift after Jeff on Soccer Saturday, and the goals are coming in, and you're updating that late kickoff. And my friend Julian Waters is sat next to me, and we have a kind of single shot like we're in now, and there's the two shot. So say Huddy is me, and Tony, you are Julian Waters, and I think it was Kalu, I can't remember, scores. And what you see is my arms shoot out and go into his shot and almost knock his head off because I've just gone, yes! Like this. Very unprofessional. I think if anything, though, I tend to be, I have to be neutral. I never say on air we or us, we lost this or, but if anything, maybe I tend to be harsher on Chelsea if I feel things aren't right, because it's not my place to talk about. It's not when I'm on air. I am neutral. I have to be. But if something isn't right, for example, the other week, I think I went a little bit. Maybe my got me a little bit too much because we're on air and we're talking about the Brentford game, and I was so incensed by the team selection for the Brentford game, threw away what could have been a win. We'd be sat in a much nicer position at this moment, and I kind of lost it a little. I went something along the lines of, it's ridiculous. What does this statement say? That winning the Conference League is more important than, or preparing for an easy Conference League game is more important than qualifying for the Champions League. Is this the state that the club is in now? And I kind of went off on one, and then I realised that I needed to rein it in. So what do you think?
I know you're a true professional, and I can understand what you're saying about going the other way. But come on, there must have been a couple of occasions where you've been rapped on the knuckles for going on.
I mean, it's a daily occurrence, to be honest with you. I mean, let's be honest. I'm always in trouble, and quite rightly so. The '94 Cup final was the one and only time where I nearly cried on air, because it was just like, and then all I could come up with was, well, maybe if Peacock hadn't hit the bar was the only thing I was, and then it was, if we didn't concede the 4, we could have got away with a 0-0 draw in a replay. I mean, I was kind of clutching at straws, but that one really hurt. I think.
Well, Chelsea should have been 3-0 up, shouldn't they?
I love that optimism. I
remember doing it. I did it at Wembley. I did a show I was on the radio.
Yeah, that was with
Law. With Dennis Law.
Came to the Capitol restaurant the day before, didn't you? Do you remember that, in Leicester Square, down beneath? And we sat there together for that. I mean, you won't remember that one. You definitely won't remember that one. Because
what are you trying to say, Rob?
There was a free bar for the people who have been on air, and Huddy got there about 2 hours earlier than he should have done. By the time we were supposed to be on air. Yeah. That '94, and Peacock hit the bar, didn't he, in the first half? Yeah. And that one hurt, I think.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the game hasn't changed in that way. It's all about even now, it's especially with Chelsea. I mean, over the last 2 or 3 years, I've fallen down every day when I'm in my mate's pub who's Chelsea mad, talking about missing chances and everything else. Well, nothing's changed really, because they're not great goal scorers.
No.
Great goal scorers never miss chances. So when you're buying inferior players and bringing inferior players, expecting them to do what Osgood used to do and Mark Hughes used to do and people like that, you've had great Jimmy Greaves before. These players, I'm not just talking about Chelsea, but in general, they're inferior. Because they cost so much money.
Mm.
And what I don't understand is when they pay 100 million for a player and they're saying, well, he's still learning the game, £100 million,
Yeah.
and give him time to settle in.
Yeah. I'm kind of, I must admit, I'm kind of caught with Chelsea as they are at the moment, because, I wonder if Abramovich really had to go, because I see the EU have now turned around and said, actually, sorry, Roman, we got that wrong. But the British government will never turn around and go, oops, sorry, Roman, we got that wrong. Even though Zelensky was talking to Biden saying, for God's sake, don't sanction Abramovich. He's my mate. He's, whatever.
Yeah.
That bit. Okay, so we get new owners. And I'm caught here, because I can see what Burley and the others have done is they've come in, they've had one transfer win and go, oh my God, we got that a bit crazy. Let's appoint people who know actually about football. So they've appointed these two people, Stuart and Winstanley, to do the hiring and firing of players, and I wonder, because the ire of the supporters at the moment towards Burley and whatever, when things aren't quite going right, I wonder whether actually it's about the recruitment. It as you were saying, Huddy, it's been totally obvious that we need a centre forward who can score 25, 30 goals this season. Yet they go out and buy 1 million midfielders, who might in 10 years' time be okay. Whereas why not say and centre halves? We seem to have about 4,000 centre halves bought in, who quite clearly aren't up to playing for Chelsea.
Yeah.
But they might be in 10 years' time or whatever. But whereas they could have got all that money and gone, right, okay, what we need is a good goalkeeper, and we need a centre forward. And
what they should have stopped as well, Rob, is that they shouldn't really allow Chelsea or any other club to have so many players and put them on loan.
Yeah.
That is a no. That shouldn't be happening. A couple of them rebounded are the obvious ones, Salah and De Bruyne, we were down here. But they're the things that can happen. But not just that, it isn't right for the game. If we buy them, then no one else can have them. That shouldn't be allowed in any country anywhere.
Yeah.
And I really believe, mainly through Arsene Wenger, is because when I played in Seattle, and although it's a North American soccer league, they had to have 4 North American players on the field at one time in each team. And I think that would have been a good rule in this country.
Mm.
That would have helped the kids coming through. They know they got a chance to get in the team if they're British. But I mean, pure British, not like Jack Charlton's Ireland, And I think that rule would have been a great rule for England.
Mm.
7's enough. 7's enough,
It used to be in Europe. That's why Michael Dubry came back, wasn't it? From his loan at Bournemouth, wasn't it? I think, wasn't it? He had to play in Europe, didn't he? And didn't have enough kind of British players in the squad, so they had to call Dubry. So it helped Michael Dubry, didn't it? I hear what you're saying. I do wonder which direction the club's going forward. I mean, obviously, Dave Sexton has. It's a difficult one. Dave Sexton's come up, and I know your feelings on Dave Sexton, but since Dave Sexton, we have only had 5 managers at Chelsea that have lasted more than 1,000 days at the club.
Wow, that's a stat.
And I've said it bravely here. I hope it's right. But I think that's John Neal, Bobby Campbell, Glenn Hoddle, who we've discussed, Ranieri, and Mourinho are the only 5 who's lasted more than 1,000 days at the club.
Really?
I mean, that worked under Abramovich, didn't it? I mean, I would like to have seen Ancelotti stay a lot longer than he did, but I think that was a kind of a personal thing there. And,
Yeah.
But you know, I'm torn between the style of football I've watched this season has. Well, I've caught up on a lot of sleep. Let's put it that way. But also that kind of desire that to have a manager who's properly invested in Chelsea and to have a kind of continuity is something I kind of always thought would be a good thing. But I don't know. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
No, I think one of the biggest problems Chelsea have now was when Palmer came in. Nobody had seen anything like it. I certainly hadn't. And an English player, I'm not saying his all-round game has made him, you know, you couldn't really say I've never seen nothing like it, but you had never seen anything like Palmer, had you? You know, this kid was doing things with closed eyes that other people couldn't see, you know. The ball inside the back last year, and, you know, that he done when that was unthinkable. And then he was doing things which were probably because we hadn't seen a player like him for a while. And then all of a sudden, it was kind of, next year's going to be a year with this fella. Now you've got to build a team around him. You know, it's like watching all the goals of Matt Letizia, you know. As he said, Matt, he said, the best I played was under Alan Ball. He just got 10 others who would do what they had to do, and I would get the goals and get it to Matt. Well, this is the same with Palmer, you know. And although there's not a one-man team, it just goes to show that since the kid's gone off the boil for whatever reason, someone's got to sit down with him. And I don't think it'd be Bowley. If someone like a Matthew Harding would have been there, I think it would have took him out for lunch and spoke to the kid, because he needs speaking to, because this ain't the same kid that came in last year.
No, but I don't think he's alone, Huddy. Maybe take Casado out of the conversation and Cucurella out of the conversation. And if you look at most of those Chelsea players this season, I'm thinking the likes of Gusto, Enzo Fernandez is beginning to come back. But if you look at the others, they've all gone backwards this season.
Well, I put a lot of that down to Palmer, because I truly believe if someone's not nobbled him, and I don't think he's a kid that could have stayed at Man City and stayed there all his life, you know, and come off the bench and done all that. So his bravery in leaving Man City told you that this kid's a great kid. You know, he wants to play. That's all he wants to do is play. He's not interested in anything else. Although I did hear yesterday that he was out in his Lamborghini the other week and he bought some lottery tickets. True story. I heard that yesterday. And a couple of scratch cards. So I don't know where that comes into it. But this kid is, someone needs to sit down with him, an older head, English head, and sit down with him and say, come on, tell me what's wrong. There's something playing on your mind, because you can't go from being sublime to ridiculous in a short space of time. That happened to me at Chelsea when I got a bad injury. You know, for 2 years, I couldn't get over it, and probably more. But this kid has not had an injury. He's the same kid. He doesn't walk on the field, and he did against Liverpool. He smiled against Liverpool, I think, once. which said he might be coming out of this slump or whatever. But I don't think it was goals that was a problem with him, because he's not a goal scorer. You don't pick him for his goal scoring. You pick him for his inventiveness, his creativeness. That's what the kid is. When he's playing, and I think I don't know whether the other team, his teammates, were not giving him the ball in the right areas. Against Liverpool again, he was getting it in that inside right position and kept knocking it out to Neto, and things were happening, But he wasn't that. They were going down the left all of a sudden. They would kind of keep the ball away from him for some reason. When I didn't get that, and I think there might have been a kind of thing in the dressing room. This kid, is it a one-man band all of a sudden?
Because a lot was made of, he's not as good when Nicholas Jackson isn't in the team, because Nicholas Jackson's running creates the space for him to play. But actually, having watched Lavia, who I think looks a fantastic, if he could get fit and stay fit, it would be incredible. But that combination of Lavia and Palmer, so simple, isn't it? It's a quick forward pass. I mean, it doesn't have to be long. It's just someone looking up and thinking forward. Whereas most of the time watching Chelsea this evening, we could be called the Crab 11, because we're just going sideways the whole. It's just, just sitting there watching the ball go sideways, 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 back to the keeper. All right, let's start again.
Yeah.
The only excitement is when Sanchez gets the ball at his feet and everyone's going, "Oh no, what's going to happen here?" Bless him. But I mean, to pick up on your point of someone taking him to one side, I don't know what you two think, but that standard that was set at Chelsea, under Abramovich, seems to have disappeared. I mean, in those days, Chelsea struggling to get in the Champions League and maybe winning the Conference League would have been considered an absolute disaster, wouldn't it? I mean, this would have been horrific. It now seems to be, oh yeah, that's really exciting. So I got to lay my cards on the table. I love John Terry. I think he's, I know there are people who would raise eyebrows at that, but I love him. I love him. And my thinking is why can't Maresca have him as his assistant manager? He's been assistant manager at Villa. Why?
Well, Robbie, I mean, the obvious thing was when he gave Frank the job. The most obvious thing is what you're talking about. The obvious thing was to bring John Terry in with him. If Frank's the boss, okay, he's his right-hand man. Or John Terry's the boss, Frank's his right-hand man. But between them, I think him and Jody Morris didn't work. Jody Morris wouldn't kind of have the kind of respect from the other players, I think Frank and JT were it's a little bit going back years when with Sexton and Doherty. I'm a great believer in, like the Clough and Taylor. I think if Chelsea had kept Sexton and had Dave Sexton as a coach, I think Chelsea would have taken over from Liverpool. I really do. And they, then Venables left, George Graham left, but we'd have been coming in. Ozzy would have been coming in then, and I was a couple of years after that. And with that Sexton manager, you must have a manager and a coach, because Dave couldn't do both. Dave weren't a manager, and I think that is this kind of thing that went wrong with Frank. I think he should have brought John Terry in with him. But then you hear these little rumours that they're not the best of friends and all this and everything else. But rumours go out the window. Best of friends or not, if it's best for the football club. If it's a good cop, bad cop, I don't know. But I think when Frank needed help, he didn't get it. He needed someone beside him to help him. Even if it was old Harry Redknapp, his uncle. He should have called him round the house and said, look, come on. Frank needed help, and this kid he aged 10 years in a year.
Mm.
And he's going to prove that he's a good manager. But, he's going to prove that. But at that time, it just didn't seem right. It brought the wrong person in with it.
Mm.
You've got to have you imagine Ancelotti with Jody Morris. There's no disrespect to Jody Morris, but at that time, when you're playing at that level, Chelsea's boards have just seen probably the best team, although they were a bit fortunate in Germany, which was a great night for them. And even Frank said without Peter Cech, we wouldn't have won it, whatever. The standards, the levels were there, weren't they? Let's not drop the standards of what's going on, because they played the game properly.
Mm.
There's nothing, Arjen Robben, you can't get anyone better on the wing,
Mm.
Frank was being played out in the wrong position for a long time, and then he had to move him to where he was good, It seems that the manager today he says we can't win I think when he started saying we can't win the league, that was poor.
Mm.
Poor management.
I mean, you would know far better than me, but what you said about Doherty, it was a trip to Blackpool, wasn't it? And Chelsea were on for a treble, and then suddenly ended up with nothing. That's because they're all sneaking out.
Listen, the funniest story about that is, and you only know it if you're an insider or a player who knew what was going on, and you say that, I knew Terry and George well. They used to sleep around my prefab after parties when I was a kid, 15 years of age, and he said the only reason Sexton sent them all home,
Doherty sent them home.
7 or 8.
Doherty sent them home.
I meant Tommy. Yeah, the only reason he sent them home was that he wasn't invited out with them that night, and that's a true story.
Oh.
That was Tommy Doherty. He would have been all right if they had said to him, "Governor, we're going out for a beer." He'd have gone, "All right, let's go," like Cluffy does with his players.
Mm.
Well, don't overdo it, but yeah, that's what you want to do. Let's go down Brian London. And I think it was Venables or George Graham said to me, was that the only reason he sent us home because he wasn't aware. He never let us know we were going out, and he wasn't invited. I know it sounds bizarre, but that is the truth of the matter. And knowing Tommy the way I know Tommy, yeah, that was it.
Mm.
And managers are like that. Managers are human beings. When I signed for Stoke, I went away on a Friday, and we had 3 or 4 of us who used to have a good time all week, and the obvious, he got the 6 or 7 others who still live in the same way with family men in small, tiny little village Stoke on Trent. And Tony knew where we were. He knew what was going on. One fella phoned Tony Waddington up one day. He was in his office, and it was a publican, and he said, "I need to tell you something, Mr. Waddington." He says, "What do you need to tell me?" He said, "I'm the governor of the such and such pub in so and so. 4 of your players were in here last night, 2 o'clock in the morning." So Tony said, "Why are you calling me to tell me this?" He said, "Because I think you need to know." He said, "I already know." So this fella's phoned him up, hoping that Tony would go in his pub and say, "Thank you very much," and start drinking in there. These people are, there's something wrong with these people. Who would do such a thing? Probably all over the lads while they were in it was probably me, Sammy, and a couple of others,
I think it's almost certainly.
Well, yeah, but Saturday comes and Tony knows, he gives you the nod, the manager. Tony was like that. Tony, we went on tour, and he said to me one day, sorry to go from Chelsea, but it's all relevant, that we was in Cyprus and he wanted to sign Jeff Salmons, who Sheffield United were on the same tour. And we were by the pool after about 4 days, and we'd found this nightclub, and we was going out on the boat with the group, took the group with us with all the booze, and great time, we're having a great time. And Tony come up to me by the pool about the 5th day. He said, will you do me a favour? So I said, what? He had his shirt hanging out of it like it was, you know, you wouldn't know he's a manager of a football club. And he said, will you come to the football to me tonight? Watch Sheffield United play. I said, what do I want to do that for? So we're on tour. We're enjoying ourselves. Football's out the window, mate. I said, no. He says, Alan, please. He said, I want to sign a player from Sheffield United, and I want to see if it's okay by you. You think you could play with him? It's great management. So I said, I'll tell you what we'll do. If I come with you for the first half, because you can tell, will you come straight to me with a nightclub afterwards and enjoy yourself with it? He says, a deal. And we went to see the first half, see Jeff Salmons. He said, that's him. Watch him. I said, I know. He's a left winger, but he's playing in my position. And I said, he's playing a little bit too good for me at the moment because he might play in my position. He went, no, he won't. Don't worry. He's back out on the left. So that night, we went to the nightclub, 4 o'clock in the morning in the hotel bar. He signed him. He done the deal with him. I was standing next to him. 4 o'clock in the morning. So this was the kind of man Docky was. He wanted to be with them that night, you know. It's a strange thing, you know. Going back to the great success Clough with this Palmer thing wouldn't happen under Brian Clough. He'd be round his house doing his garden, weeding his garden for him. Brian Clough, Mrs. Palmer, you know. Let's all sit down. All the family sit down. What's wrong with him over there? What's wrong? Tell us. You know, simple. But no, everybody. There's more people I've ever spoke to watching over the years at Chelsea are more baffled about Palmer at the moment than any other player, I think, in the history of the club. This ain't the same kid as last year. And it's a manager's job to sort that out. That's his job. That's what he's paid for. If your best player is not getting enough of the ball, there's something wrong. And if he ain't happy, there's something wrong. You got to make him happy. Ain't money. It's nothing to do with money. It's nothing to do with him want to move anywhere. Because last year when he was scoring the goals, he was going behind the crowd and he was gesturing, you know, great. This kid was a breath of fresh air. Now there's no breath of fresh air, is there?
No.
And you got to put. I think Chelsea would have. I said at the beginning of the season, if Palmer stays like that, Chelsea would go close to win the league this year. Because if they all improve around him and keep it going, and they improve as he's come in and showed them how to play, basically. That's what he did. Showed them how to play football, like you're saying with the other kid in midfield now. A simple pass like he made the other day. That's all that's needed. Give it him in the right spot. You know, my job was to get it to Osgood as quickly as I could, because and Dave Sexton used to say to me, why do you keep passing to him and why don't you pass it out? No, I said, because if you give it to your best players, you've got more chance of winning.
It's quite simple football, isn't it?
Isn't it? Well, it is. If us three are running a football club and we sitting down talking in general, we would say we want defenders to defend, midfield players to defend and attack, but be there, and you give it to your best players. You know, it's not rocket science. It's give it to your best players. Now Chelsea are not passing to Palmer where they used to pass him before, and so why? That's the manager's not bringing 3 subs on at a time and 4 subs on at a time. That's not management. Sorting Palmer out, because without Palmer, Chelsea are like a 2-goal different team. You know.
Okay,
it must be bothering you.
I think we're probably taking up far too much of Rob's time, and I'm sure the 3 of us could talk Chelsea and football all day if we.
Well, you could talk about Palmer, the Palmer situation all day. I mean, if we'd have started off on him, we would have probably done a whole show on him. You know,
yeah.
We would love to get him on here and ask him, please tell the Chelsea supporters what is wrong.
That's your job,
not
Tony.
Not aside, not it's
Doesn't want much, does he?
well, it's that out of reach, It's simple things are done. People like Clough used to do things, to play games on people to get, and they're 50 years later, they're all coming back and laughing at him. But he won 2 European Cups with Nottingham Forest, which are unheard of. With these players that you're talking about the night in Munich, you had a great team. You had great players in that team. Well, he went and done it with probably 2 great players and a goalkeeper, which is suspect in my eyes. But John Robertson was out of this world for me, genius. And I think in the back, people like Kenny Burns, that's what you need at the back, Not these players that just keep passing it across, as you said.
Mm.
Before we go, Rob, and thanks very much for giving up so much of your time so kindly this morning. Just before we came on air, you showed us a couple of bits of Chelsea memorabilia. Is it possible to just show the people watching out there what you've got and why you've got them?
Also, could we have a little strum of the old?
Okay, hold on. Yes, we can do that. Right, so that there is the one behind me actually is a Hampton and Richmond Borough shirt. My son, when he was 16, was on the bench for their FA Cup game against Oldham. So that's why that one's there. Over there is a signed Chelsea shirt. Oh, I don't know if we're going to be able to. We tried it. I don't know if this is going to work.
That's Jack Nicholson, yeah.
Yeah. There is those 2 original pictures that came when the offices were being redeveloped. The bottom one's an original picture of the 1913-14 Chelsea team, and the one above's an original picture, I think, from one of the cup finals. I've got where can you see that there? I've got a team sheet from the Champions League final upstairs framed. I've got, when players sign and they hold the shirt up on the pitch, they used to in the old days. One of my colleagues at Sky, when Frank Lampard signed, when they finished doing the photo thing, they put the shirt just on one of the seats. And I'm not going to name him because he nicked it. He nicked it and very kindly gave it to me.
Wow.
So I've got the shirt signed by Frank upstairs framed, that he actually held up on the pitch on the day that he signed. So I've got loads of other Chelsea bits all around the house, but I got a framed one from the Middlesbrough Cup final signed by Eddie Newton, the ticket, and all sorts of bits and bobs. I've got loads of bits and bobs.
Brilliant.
And the guitar come from Elvis Costello, I suppose. I don't want to go to Chelsea, wouldn't it?
That is there because I do enjoy playing the guitar. People listening might say I murder the guitar, but
yeah,
I kind of enjoy playing it. But yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, Rob. So we're not going to get a tune out of you then before we go.
Wow. What would you like? I don't know.
Lewis and Colour, I suppose.
Wow. It's most probably out of tune at the moment.
Now, what are you, a country and western man?
Oh, it's almost in tune, isn't it? Yeah, it's almost in tune. Blue is the colour. Oh my God, I don't know.
No, you don't know. I was only joking.
Play your favourite number that you like to play.
Oh, well, if I was to go on Mastermind, if Chelsea wasn't my specialist choice, David Bowie 1968 to 1983 would be my...
Oh, give us a Bowie number. Are you actually playing? Can we? It's not coming through.
Isn't it not?
No.
Really? I was playing. You should have heard the guitar solo I just done. Brian May would have been impressed by that.
I thought it was Eric Clapton.
Yeah, Eric Clapton. I was actually playing a bit of Ziggy Stardust there.
Oh, what a shame we couldn't hear it.
Oh well.
Well, maybe it might be better.
Yeah, I think actually for anyone
After
watching,
what you just said.
yeah, anyone watching, it most probably was better, but you can't hear that at all.
No.
Wow. I wonder why that is. That's quite strange.
Yeah.
To do with the speakers,
Yeah. So there we go. That's my guitar.
Brilliant.
Well done.
Listen,
Well done.
Thanks very much for giving up your morning, Rob. It's been brilliant listening to your Chelsea anecdotes.
It's been an honour to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Great. Lovely podcast. We never knew that. Now we know more about you. Yeah, it was 5 when we won the Cup Winners' Cup. 5 or the FA Cup, was it?
No, when you first went to the bridge.
FA Cup 1.
Yeah.
Is that right? Because I was born in November, so I always have to take a year off. So I was born in '68. So two when we won the FA Cup, 3 Cup Winners' Cup, 4 we don't mention the League Cup, 5 when I first went to Chelsea.
Right. So you were born when I made my debut at Chelsea.
Yeah.
68, 69.
I didn't even know I was born, Huddy.
Nor did I. I weren't really born in football until I left Chelsea for Stoke. That's when I started to play the game that I love playing. And that's the truth. When I was in Chelsea, I used to be the gopher for Charlie and Ozzy and whatever. I was a runner. I was a kid who used to do all their running for them.
Have you ever seen that? I know we got to go, but have you ever seen that video that Gerald Sinstadt, the history of Chelsea? I think I had the VHS of it. That's how, and I used to watch it again and again and again. And they go through the Moscow game, and there's the bloke guy there with the referee making the decision, and the referee goes, "I did it for diplomatic reasons," and the bloke goes, "Diplomatic reasons? That's just cost me my win bonus."
That was Tommy Lawton, wasn't it?
Yeah, and so it goes all through the history, and then it has you playing football in the car park out the front there. And it goes through. It was a brilliant video. Gerald Sinstadt did the narration on it, and I used to get home from school and I used to put that VHS on again and again and again and just watch it over and over and over. It was brilliant.
A friend of mine was a producer of that video, a guy called Steve Gordon, who's, again, like you and I, Rob, massive Chelsea fan.
Yeah,
labour of love for him.
Yeah, it was brilliant. If anyone out there hasn't watched it, it's kind of.
Are you still watching it now?
Well, it's VHS. I'll have to try and work out how to get it on something different. I don't know if there's a VHS machine in existence anymore.
I've still got one.
Have you?
Yeah.
Oh, I can get my Full Members Cup final video out as well. What game that was?
We don't want to watch that. Okay, Rob. Brilliant to have you.
Great memories. Thanks for coming on, Rob.
Thanks for inviting me.
And
we'll do it again. We'll do it again when things change. When Palmer's back to his best, we'll do another show.
All right. Well let's do one Monday morning then, because this weekend he's going to do it.
Okay. Good luck, pal.
All right. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.